Hey, everybody, welcome to Ostravaganza 2021 virtual edition. Marc Baum here from the International L. Frank Baum and All Things Oz Historical Foundation. And I am joined by author Tom Hutchison. Tom, welcome.
Thank you. Author. I'm in the comic book world, we're generally called writers, but in Oz,
Right.
somehow I'm an author. I like that.
You're an author, a writer, a creator, an Imagineer. You can be all those things. I don't know if you can be an Imagineer. That might be a copyright, but
That's a copyright thing. Yeah, sure.
You can be for sure. Tom, in case you don't know, if you haven't met Tom at a previous festival, we were just talking before we started. He's been at 9 of them, and last year would have been the 10th one, and this year would have been the 10th one.
Yeah, right.
And the pandemic had other plans, so this is his 10th appearance at an Ostravaganza, although this is virtual. And he's here because of the absolutely fascinating comic book and graphic novel that he does, a series called Legends of Oz, The Wicked West. And Tom, why don't you tell everybody kind of what that is?
Sure. Well, the basic elevator pitch, as they call it, is we have a Western reimagining of the Wizard of Oz. So instead of ruby slippers, Dorothy has ruby spurs, ruby bullets. Toto is her horse. Basically, what we did is we took we've expanded beyond the original Wizard of Oz book that Baum wrote. But basically, we took the Wizard of Oz, threw it into the Western blender, and came out with what is still tonally and texturally what Baum intended, but in the form of the Wild West. There's a little bit of steampunk elements to it that kind of create that steampunk vibe. If you guys are familiar with the steampunk term, so it's action, it's adventure, it's steampunk, it's the Wizard of Oz. Still, it is based in Baum's work, but with all the little Western tricks that we can throw in whenever possible.
Right, and Dorothy Gale, your Dorothy Gale's a fascinating character, but you've drawn on way more than just like the MGM world that people might be familiar with. You've really gotten into the Baum books.
Yeah, and that was on purpose. We when the idea sort of formed of just a Wild West Oz, the first thing that I wanted to do was ground everything in Baum's work. There's obviously the MGM movie, there's the Tin Man movie, there's tons of things that have already been adapted from the work. So for me, it was important to me to make sure that what I was doing was grounded in what Baum gave us first. I didn't, obviously there are nods to Wicked, there are nods to Judy Garland and that sort of thing, but the primary elements of the book and my story, even though it is my story, it does draw directly from Baum first, and that was done on purpose.
It does, and you go deep into characters too, which is not something you see a lot. A lot of comics, a lot of graphic novels kind of have throwaway characters, right? So they'll pop in and out but throw away. But you've really kind of kept with the theme of Baum and having these characters that keep coming back, and you've done some kind of side projects with the Kaleidas and some different things that you've brought in these characters in this world. And TikTok, makes an appearance. You've handled masterfully, in my opinion, the transition of Tip becoming Princess Ozma. And spoiler alert, but if you haven't read the books that came out 121 years ago, it's really on you, not me.
Yeah, except that's one of the ways that, and we don't tell them how we do it because that is a spoiler. But it's one of the examples of how I use the Baum world in my world is when we got to the point where we had to bring Ozma back, and Tip becomes Ozma. I didn't want to use Baum's method, but I did go deep into what he wrote to see if there was an alternative method that he actually established that would accomplish the feat of turning Tip back into Ozma, that already existed. And because I didn't want to just make something up and be like, oh, here, we're just going to make our own thing. Here it is. I went all the way into Baum's world to find a way to do it. And I did. And the people that know Oz, when they have read that segment of it, and they're like, oh my God, that's such a great way to kind of put it's a twist without it being a twist,
Yeah.
But it worked really well. And I was really happy with it. And it's not just a matter of, hey, I found a way to do this differently. It also creates an element. It's really hard to talk about without spoiling it.
Right.
It really creates an element going forward that kind of pushes Ozma into a very specific type of character that she has to do going forward. She has a new thing to struggle with, sort of, because of the way that I kind of changed her. So yeah, it's fun.
Right. And you do that with a lot of the characters. I mean, a lot of the characters are non-traditional in the way that you've approached them. And
Sure.
I'm thinking of like how you did the Jack Pumpkinhead or the Scarecrow, even. So you've taken some Western themes, you've woven them in with the Oz story, but you've really taken a different approach than I think we've seen in any other Oz offering. I mean, there's a lot out there, you know. There's a lot of Oz that's come before, a lot of Oz that's still coming out.
Sure.
And Wicked West is really, in my opinion, anyway, and I see, you know, all the Oz. It is really unique in the way that it stands out, that the characters stand out, and then again, you didn't kind of do throwaway. I mean, it would have been very easy to have, you know, her three friends just be kind of bumbling along through the series and really focus on Dorothy Gale. And you didn't do that. Tell me about why in your process it was important to you to not only diversify these characters in the way that you did, but how that story plays into your writing and your creativity and even the art with the different artists you use.
Sure. Yeah, we actually got really lucky on art. A lot of times comic books, just because of the scheduling involved, because they're coming out every single month, a lot of times you don't get consistency in art. Oftentimes you'll see guys come and go and come and go. With us, we had really one primary artist through the whole series up until recently, and that was Allison Borges. He did, I think, out of the 15 issues that we did while he was doing it, I think he did, 21. I think he did like 16 of the 21. So we had a really great continuity artistically. And then Carlos Reno filled in for some issues, and he's now actually the ongoing artist. So we've really only had two artists on all of these issues. We're going into like 25, 26 issues now. So the art continuity has been really great. As far as creating the story, I mean, the original story is basically the Wizard of Oz. Dorothy comes to Oz, gets her buddies, they go find the wizard, all of the Western twists and so on. But as we moved forward, we created something that, to my knowledge, has never been done in Oz before, and that is our Dorothy becomes the peacekeeper or the witch of the West and the East simultaneously. It creates a bit of a power struggle in Oz. Glinda's not real happy about that. But in doing that, it also allowed us to almost put Dorothy on the shelf for a little while and allowed us to focus on the Tin Man, the Scarecrow, introducing Tip, introducing Jack Pumpkinhead. And all of that was done because those characters kind of, in my mind, needed that little bit of extra lift before we then come back and say, oh yeah, and don't forget, Dorothy Gale is now, you know, the Witch of the East and the West at the same time. So there was a whole bunch of sort of swirling storylines that really were designed on purpose that way, so that we finally got to, we even kind of ended this this big sort of arc with the backstory of the flying monkeys, the golden cap, which Dorothy is now in possession of. And then boom, this all kind of comes to a head. Dorothy's there, Jack Pumpkinhead's there, Tip's there, and then that leads us right into what we're doing with Ozma. So it's all there for a reason. And I'm glad people see it. Some people do, some people don't. There's no right or wrong, but it is interesting to see the reactions, like from the people that really know the Oz books specifically, and they come to me and they're like, "Oh, wow, I can't believe you did this. I can't believe you did that." Like in a good way. They're like, "That was really cool. It was very smart." And then there's other guys that are just like, they don't know what I'm trying to do, so they're just getting this adventure story, and they're still like, "Wow, this was really great. How this story went here and this story came back, and then it connected." So it's really fun to talk to the people once they've read the books. That's one of the great things about Oztravaganza is meeting all these people that come from Oz from all these different levels and different areas, and then I get to introduce them into something else.
And you tell a great story. There's two things there. First, the golden cap. Just mentioning that casually, there will be Oz fans who know exactly what that is, who've read the books, and there are people watching right now who are like, "What golden cap?" Go read the books, and
yes,
or pick up Legend of Oz: The Wicked West, and you'll know.
Volume 4 has the golden cap.
There you go. So there's a lot of fun there. But then the other part of that is too, when you talk about the art and kind of the artists and some of the character creations that you've done, and kind of, you were thinking of a Western, and Jack Pumpkinhead is a great example of one that I'm going to show in a second, actually, that
Sure.
you've done. You describe it and I'll show it. How about that?
Sure. Yeah. So when we did Jack Pumpkinhead, obviously we have magic and such going on in the world, but when we got to Jack, I was talking to my designer. I was like, we want to have this character, but I don't think that the classic Jack, the stick figure guy, basically with literally a pumpkin on his head, that's just too much for me. I don't want to do that. So how do we take Jack Pumpkinhead and translate him into the West, and make him but still have him be Jack Pumpkinhead? And Jen Broomall did a lot of our designs, and she designed Jack, and she came up with the idea. Oh, look at you showing off your foil cover.
Right. Thanks for noticing.
She came up with the idea of the face mask, the bandana, being the jack-o'-lantern style, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's brilliant. And so we took that idea, ran with it. So Jack really, ultimately, in all of the characters that we've done, he is probably the most 180 degree different from all of the others, because we really kind of created Jack again for us. He has the same reason to be there, with friends of Tip and so on. But we gave him a connection backwards to Ozma and her disappearance. We gave him more of a backstory. So he's the one that kind of got, he's the one character that's mostly from scratch from us. And he was more of but we wanted to land on that visual, and Jen did a great job on that.
Really spectacular. And then the other thing that I want to grab on that you said was, you were talking about being at Extravaganza, and you tell a great story about kind of how people find you. So share with everyone kind of how it's gone at the festival, where they walk by and they see the they see the art first, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So basically this goes back to my first Extravaganza, and it was set up originally in the main tent, where it was kind of a maze, and people were waiting in line to get autographs by some of the munchkins that were there and so on. Right. But it was set up so that they had to stand in a maze, and they would see all of the people that were there, whether they were selling books or whatever, in my case, the comic books. So that first year that I was there, I had people literally just standing in front of the booth while they were waiting to get their stuff, and I would get different reactions. Some people would come by and be like, oh, what's that? Tell me what that is. Oh, this is a new thing, and whatever. Other people I would get to come by, and they would just give me the stink eye. They'd just be like, that, literally the quote was, that doesn't look very nice. And so I was like, well, let me tell you what's going on. So, but what was interesting is I came back, it was like 9 straight years I came back to the show. So every year I would see some of these same people, and it only took a couple of years before some of those people that used to give me the stink eye were finally like, this guy's still here. Okay, let's figure out why he's here. Let's go talk to him about this book. And invariably, when I talk to people who are the Oz purists, the book and the original movie, basically, 9.9 times out of 10, they will see that I know what I'm talking about, as far as having read the books myself, as far as how I'm translating the books into this new format. And while they still may not agree, like, well, she's too old, or I don't like her with the guns, it's like, I understand, like that's a perfectly reasonable thing to kind of be weird about. But like I said, 9.9 times out of 10, they're going to pick up the book, they're going to look at it, and they're going to at least understand, okay, I get it. This guy isn't just having Dorothy run around in Daisy Dukes, and it's not one of those books. So it's been really great over all of these years to watch the conversion process of a lot of these folks that have invariably ended up buying the book.
I mean, you've literally won them over. And I'll tell you, I'm a comic book guy to start out with, as you know. So I started out loving the comics, and then when you did the first trade paperback and you put them together as a graphic novel, I jumped all over the opportunity to write the foreword for the first book. It's truly one of the best 5 or 6 comics out there, and I say that without reservation. There's so many books, right? There's so much, and so many of the big companies, if you will, have gone way off track, trying to appease to everybody, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that's fair
right.
to say. So they're just saying they want to be everything to everybody. You can't be. And I think
Yeah,
you know your market. You kind of focused in on this is what I want to do, right?
right.
With all your books, with all of Big Dog Inc.'s books, which is your publishing house that's yours, right? Big Dog Inc.
Yes.
And you do some other titles. I'm also a big fan, as you know, of Ursa Minor, which is a werebear. Everyone, not to ruin anything there, but to pick it up. And but the Oz series is just stands alone on its own, and excellent writing, obviously, goes into that. And how do you sketch out your stories? I mean, do you always have kind of 2 or 3 stories floating around in your head, and you kind of go, go time, and I've just got to sit down, or do you have focus time where you sit down and say, okay, I'm going to work on Oz today. This is what I need to get done, or how does that work for your process?
Yeah,
You write a lot of titles.
yeah, I do. I do.
Yeah.
It's easier now because we're not doing as many. We used to do anywhere between 2 to 5 books a month. And at that point, I was just a machine of just like every day I have to be writing. Now that we've slowed down our distribution process and we do basically quarterly books, it's a little easier. So I can take a little more time. I can focus on a book now. I can focus on a different book. But even when I was doing all of them at the same time, it was sort of it was a combination of, okay, which deadline is closest, and also just kind of what am I feeling like today? I write, this Western book, Ursa Minor is horror. I have a superhero book called Critter. So I do genres across the board. And sometimes when you write, you're just not feeling like writing upbeat, peppy horror, superhero people. You need to go in and write some horror, and write something about a vampire biting somebody's face off. You just got to do it. And so, but for now, while I do have, like, I'm writing right now, I'm writing Legend of Oz. I'm writing Camp Rad Dog, which is a crossover with another comic book company. I just wrote a Goth Day adaptation of all of our characters. I'm writing the remaining Oz for the rest of the year. I'm already working on Ursa Minor for next year. So there's still a lot kind of happening, but I do have a little more time now because everything's more quarterly than we were in the past. So
right.
It really comes down to, like, okay, I need to do some writing today. Let's open this script and let's see if anything happens. And if it does, great, let's just power into this. And if it doesn't, then I'm gonna just move over and write something else, because clearly the vibe of the day is not Westerns. It's clearly horror. Let's go over there. So and
you've taken some stabs. You've taken some stabs into other things too. You kind of took a swipe, I think, at reality shows with Lights, Lights Camera Jungle, right?
Yep.
And so you did that. You did a great horror piece with, I was just thinking of it. The Headless Woman.
Antoinette.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Antoinette.
Antoinette was our
which is
historical
also another
fiction.
one of my favorites. Yeah, I love that one.
Yeah. Historical fiction was fun to do.
Historical fiction, yep. So you've kind of stabbed out some other things too, which are fun. And the other thing that I like, besides the stories and the variety, and coming back to especially Oz, is you've worked with some really fabulous artists, and you've got some variant covers, and you bring in their work. While you've had the same kind of team doing the inside art, your cover art, and where do you find these amazing people to do the cover art that you've put out there?
Well, when I started, there was a website called Digital Webbing where I basically used their classified ads. I need people to draw my stuff. But then over time, as I hired those guys, it became sort of the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon thing. I have worked with this guy. I need somebody else. He would recommend, oh, I know this guy. And I'd be like, oh, okay, let's put him on the book, and let's put him on the book. Some of these guys work for studios, and it was like, well, talk to my studio head. We have other people involved. So it just kind of became this organic thing. And then as the internet grew and grew and grew, Facebook and all this kind of stuff, now I'm in all kinds of art groups, just all kinds of places. And I'm just always looking for something that's going to be like, oh, I want that. And that's how we had that one book that you just showed with Shannon Mayer. We found him on Facebook. We just came across his stuff in a group, and we were like, oh, that's pretty darn good. Are you ever interested in doing some comic books? Yeah. And he was like, yeah, I want to do comics. And so we published his first ever comic. Now he's one of the biggest guys in the industry right now. So while we have worked with established folks, J. Scott Campbell and so on, we've also discovered people and given them opportunity, and then they've just taken and run with it.
Right. Does the art ever affect your storyline? Do you ever have an artist that you're like, I can write something that really is going to pull this person's art, in, or have
Well,
you seen it and said, you know what, that's an interesting take on that might sway it a little bit?
Not in the context of the story, but what I do, and this is important for writers, particularly writing for comics, because you're writing for your audience, but you're also writing for your artist to draw whatever it is that you're writing. Artists are going to have weaknesses and strengths, and you need to recognize them very quickly. For example, if you have an artist that struggles with drawing cars, you can't be loading up your scenes with a lot of cars, because it's just going to look wonky. Now, the flip side of that is, dude, I need you to draw cars better, and just keep making him do it. And then there'll be an evolution to his art, and he'll finally start to click, and it'll be better. If you watch things in Oz, in Penny for Your Soul, in Critter, these guys that are drawing these things at the beginning, and then you look 20 issues down the line, you're watching the evolution of their art, which is super fun. It's really exciting to see how they kind of really turn these books into their own. And I always told people, I talked to Allison, I was like, man, I'm really sorry to lose you, because he went on work for DC and so on. It's like, man, I really am sorry to lose you, because I don't know if we can replace you, man. Like you had really grown this into your book. And so we had to pass the baton on to Carlos. And even now, you look at the early Carlos pieces and look at what he's doing now, and that's only like 5 or 6 issues. Even he has grown into this role now, where he's really kind of starting to understand the world, understand the scripts, understand the characters, and really bring himself into the work. And that's kind of the fun part, is kind of knowing, like, okay, I know Carlos can do this, I know FICO can do that, I know what they can't do or are weak at, so I'm going to write around those things so I can always make them look as good as possible while still telling my story.
Right, and it makes the story compelling, and you don't want to get caught up on looking at art that's not right.
Sure,
Exactly.
Right.
And we've all opened books where we've done that, right? I mean, that's the big. So we've all opened a comic book and been like, "Oh, this is great," and then you open, you go. And it's hard to get back in that world. Listen, I'm willing to suspend disbelief for a certain amount of time, but that'll pull you out of it as quickly as a bad story, maybe more quickly, because it's visual and you see it, and it's hard to get past that to the words once you have that issue.
Comics are a visual medium, and as much as me as a writer would be like, no, don't worry, just read the book, you'll love it. Like, I totally understand that that you're looking at it, and if you can't look at it and enjoy what the visuals are showing you, most of the time it doesn't matter how good the story is.
So you've spent a decade now being in the Oz universe.
10 years this year.
Yeah, 10 years this year. You've acquired some Oz celebrity of your own. You're the guy. Obviously, talking to us. You appeared at another festival last week. I mean, you keep doing things like this, right?
Sure.
So how does it feel to be on that side of it? To be, when you go to a show, you go to a festival, and now you get where people recognize you, right? I mean, I've seen people talk about your stuff on their vlogs or on their posts or on their whatever. So we see that start to come up now. So when you see that, or you see your comics start to get graded and selling for ridiculous amounts of money for some of the limited editions, how does that feel to kind of that arc over the last 10 years in the Oz universe? And the Oz fandom may be a little different than other fandoms. Let's be honest.
It's really weird. It's really weird. It's hard to really accept that it's happening. It's kind of like, and I don't want to compare myself to like movie stars, but it's kind of like that, where you talk to movie stars a lot of times and they'll just be like, what? I just make movies. Like, I'm just a person. I just happen to make movies. Like I wear Crocs and I play chess in the park. I do what people do. And I'm the same way. It's like, I just do what people do. I just happen to make comics. I make something that people like. And it's very cool. It's very humbling particularly when you meet people at the cons and they come up and they're like, oh man, I read this book and this is like so good. And I see that on Facebook and social media all the time. People will get their new books and they'll just make a post. They won't even tag me necessarily. They'll be like, oh, I got this book and it's like so good and this art was on. It's like, oh my gosh, that's like so amazing that people are so excited about it that they'll take their time to go and write, and I'm not talking about like a blog post, like a reviewer, like that's their job. But these are just like people that are just like excited.
Normal
like,
people.
I got the new Oz book. It's so good. You guys got to get it. Type. That's amazing. That is truly amazing. And I really appreciate all of those folks that take that time. Appreciate everybody that supports what we do in whatever capacity they can or do. It's like we always talked about with Big Dog Inc. is it's everybody makes it work. I mean, I'm at the top of the pyramid because if I don't write, nothing below me happens. But when it's art and color and ink and printer and fans and collectors and people that talk about it, that all has to work or nothing works. And so, that's the Big Dog Inc. family that we talk about. We do live shows where fans come in. In fact, we even bring fans on the shows with us sometimes. It's not just me sitting here, talking to them about, hey, buy my book. It's like, no, I want you to come on the show with me and let's talk about whatever we want to talk about. So we really do have like and we try to push the idea of the Big Dog Inc. family, which includes everybody that is involved in what we do from top to bottom.
So how do people get your books other than if they happen to be at the All Things Oz Museum, they can pick them up there? But
right.
How do they get the newest, the latest, the upcoming Legend of Oz, The Wicked West?
Yeah, so the easiest way is just go to our website, bigdoginc.com. It'll take you right to the web store. You can click on comics. It'll show you all of the different things that we do. Click on whatever you want. Click on Oz. Oz will then break into, like, here you can get these volumes. Like we have these big thick volumes. You can buy like Mark just showed you, you can buy the individual single issues. Whatever we have is right there. That is the easiest way to do it. If you want to go a little deeper, we use a platform called Kickstarter now, where we do Kickstarter campaigns basically quarterly. And we've already done 2 Oz campaigns this year. The last one will be in October. And that is where we kind of bring everything to market. It's like, here's the new issue. Here's the 4 or 5 covers that we have that you can choose from, or you can buy them all if you like. And the campaign runs for about a month. And then we start to, kind of finalize the project, get it to print, send it out to you a couple of months later. And Kickstarter has been really great for us. It's really changed the way that we do things. We're not in comic book stores anymore. The distribution method for us is really direct from us to you through the Kickstarters, through Comic Cons, which I'm going back to now this year, through the website, through live sales that we do on Facebook here. So we've really modified how we do it. It's us to you basically all the time now. Find us on social media, specifically Facebook. We use Facebook a lot. That is sort of our home for social media, but we're on Twitter and Instagram and all that kind of stuff too. But bigdoginc.com, they'll take you right to the store and you can go through everything that we have, all of the 11 different titles that we do.
And of course, the first weekend in June 2022, you'll be back at Ozstravaganza.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
In person. Now, you talk about doing in person. The last thing I want to talk about. So you're doing some in-person appearances this year. I actually saw you on a poster with Lou Ferrigno.
That's correct.
Tell us what's coming up where people can see you live in person.
Yeah, so the one that's coming up is Albuquerque Comic-Con. It's the weekend of June 25th. Ironically enough, that was the first and only show we did last year. It was in January. And then everything went south. So Albuquerque invited us back. I said, yeah, let's do this. So we will be in Albuquerque. I will be there with Oz artist, Nia Rufino. She will be with me. We also have some other BDI artists that are going to be in the Artist Alley section of Albuquerque Comic-Con. But it's a nice little show. If you're in that area, if you're within a few hours drive of Albuquerque, I definitely recommend you coming up, checking it out. There's movie stars, there's TV stars, there's comic book stars. Albuquerque's a good fun little show. And then we'll be doing some other things later in the year, Detroit, Akron, and so on.
Okay, so watch for Tom Hutchison out at conventions, Oz conventions, comic book conventions. He's kind of everywhere. You can check him out online at Big Dog Inc. or on Facebook at Big Dog Inc. And of course at Ozstravaganza when we're back next year. Fingers crossed. So
absolutely.
Tom, thanks for spending some time with us and spending some time with the fans. We're happy to have you as always. And good luck to you. And thanks for sharing the world of Oz in a Western vision for everyone to enjoy.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Anytime.
Thanks, Tom.